To everyone here in the room this morning, thank you for being here. I appreciate you spending your time and paying attention. We are recording these sessions to post online later, so for those of you who are watching online, I am Father Louis Powell. I am the pastor of St. Michael's Church in San Clemente, and the links are in the notes. We have been in these sessions talking about what it means to be, as a Christian, to be a leader in the home and in the workplace and in the church. This is our final session. We have previously talked about our call as leaders, and I want to just reiterate at this point, one of the things that seems apparent to me is that to be a mature Christian is to be a mature person, and to be a good leader is the same as being a good Christian leader. We have talked about the qualities that we aspire to as a leader, those traits that we want to exhibit to be perceived by others. We've talked about process steps of leadership. We've talked about our communications, and we've talked about the work of leadership. Today, we're going to be talking about how to be the leader that God created you to be. This is developing who you are as a Christian and as a leader. And we're going to talk about some technical aspects of that. Specifically, first, I want to talk about the skills that we develop in the workplace that enable you to lead whatever your position is, the skills that you use. The first one is technical skills, where you are a leader in things. You have expertise that allows you to lead others about technology or the technical nature of the work with things. Another skill that you have as a leader is working with people, human skills. The ability to lead is the ability to work with others. It is essential. Another skill is your conceptual skills, your ability to manage ideas with others. Now, in this space, as we are leaders, there are different forms of leadership. And what's interesting about this is that it depends on the moment you're in, the situation you're in, and the people that you're around. There is not one, here is the form of leadership you should always follow. It is, here are the forms of leadership that may be appropriate where you are. The first one I have on my list is a laissez-faire leadership, a unstructured leadership. I have a caption in there of, it's first among equals, where you have a group of people who work cooperatively together, but there is a leader who's there able to make decisions. The second one is very closely related to this, and that's kind of a democratic, participative type of leadership where it's not really great in most cases, but it can be appropriate in some cases where everybody involved gets a say and you work it out together as to what it is. Very much like the laissez-faire, but with less of an opportunity for directed activities. And that means in a crisis, it can be a problem, because you're going to have to decide before you do. The next form is a manipulative or inspired, which is a question people ask. To inspire people to do the work is a good thing, but it's also just very closely adjacent to just manipulating people. And that is bad, but it's a thing you have to understand the moment. To be able to inspire people, think about the halftime speeches a coach gives, gets the team fired up to go out there and come back for the win. That's a legitimate part of leadership. But if all you have is manipulation, you will go nowhere. It is your ability to appeal to emotions and to be able to motivate people to do things that are necessary and good for the team, the organization, and for them. The next one is a benevolent autocratic. And that is how much coordination you're imposing on people. It's less coordinated, and it is, benevolent. It's an environment where people are in agreement and working for the good of each other and for the team. And the last form I'll call out is an autocratic bureaucratic. In a bureaucratic world, the process is the boss. And it doesn't matter who or what or where, you have to follow the process. In an autocratic, it's a dictator. And it depends on the kind of environment you're in and what is the urgency of the matter. If you don't have time to discuss it, you don't have time. If it is super critical, then you're going to have to be specific in what the requirements are. It is about balancing doing the thing well and doing well for the people in the team and the organization. And in all of the situations you might face in a place where you're leading, it's going to depend on the circumstances, and you want to adapt. I would say, when I look back over the different experiences I've had in leadership, I can't point out which one of these things is the one, because I've done all of them at various times. Maybe other people who work with me who could point out where I tend to go more than others, but it is one of those things in understanding the art of leadership is figuring out what works for the circumstances and the people. Now, the style of leadership that you follow is going to be influenced by a number of different things. And this goes to our adaptability as well. One of the things that's very fundamental to who you are as a leader is the personality that you have. And you've been around people that people vary considerably over the kind of personalities they have. And when you're in a role of leadership, your personality comes out. As I said, I don't know what my go-to style is, but others can probably figure it out. It's something related to my personality. The other thing that comes into play is who are the people that you're working with? That will be an important influence on how you adapt. Who the people are, what their needs are, and what the immediate and long-term situation calls for. You're going to find a style, a place where you're most comfortable based on the kind of personality that you have. Now, behavior is a dominating factor in how you lead and how people respond to your leadership. Behavior is really about human nature, the people as they are, and how people behave is going to influence how you work to provide the best leadership that you can. Leadership is a very social activity. It will always depend on the person that you're dealing with or people you're dealing with and the environment. Every person you meet is a universe unto themselves. I heard a statistic that there are more neuron connections in your brain than there are stars in the universe. So it's like when you meet a person, you're meeting an entire new universe. And one of the things that's interesting to me as I've worked with a lot of different people is that no matter how a person behaves, whether you like it or you don't like it, to the person themselves, it makes sense. They may not have logically spelled out a set of rules that they're following, but they're acting that way because it makes sense to act that way. So you're dealing with somebody that's acting out what they believe, who they are. And that is going to be influenced by how they perceive the situation itself. Like not your perspective, but from their perspective, what do they see in this situation? How do they, in this situation, perceive themselves? And what are the things, I call this out as needs. What are the person's needs? But a person comes into a situation at work, at home, at church, with a myriad of things that are going on in their life that are going to be an influence to them and how they're going to behave. Being aware that that's true helps you to act out this social aspect of leadership. And behavior is not immutable. People change. People always change. What you want is for people to change for the better, but they will change one way or another. One of the things that you can do to help people change in their behavior is to address their knowledge and their skill set. And I'll give you an example of something I experienced decades ago, in that I was working on a team where I was an expert in a particular application, but I moved into a position where I was going to be the administrator for that software tool for everybody. It was a jump in expertise required. And the company sent me off to training on this software, and like all of it, it existed as a dashboard. It existed as a thing like Excel or Word you're probably familiar with, and there's all these menus and all these drop-downs. And some of those drop-downs down there are like options, and you go in and you set a bunch of options. So imagine that thing where every menu and every item on there was a set of options that you had to define. And that training was to go through every single option on every single menu. It was a week of just intense focus on all of those things, just one after another. And when I came back from that training, while, experiencing the training was like tedious, let's say. But when I came back, I had a new level of confidence about what I was doing and what I could do and how to get the thing done. And in addition to that, as I came back and I'm working in that role as the administrator, there comes a time when you have to actually push the button and change the option and say done. And the first time you do that is terrifying. Do you really know what you think you know? And then the more you push that button, all of a sudden you forget you're even doing it. You just do the thing. And there is this dramatic change in behavior that comes from my skill level completely changing. I knew so much more and was much more fluid and confident about it. Another thing that's a little less defined is about the situation itself. The situation a person finds themselves in that determines their behavior. If you're able to change their perspective of the situation, change their perspective of themselves, even changing what the actual situation is for them. I'm moving you into this other role where you'll have these different set of responsibilities where people find a fit and comfort, sufficient comfort in the work that they have responsible that they're interested in something more. They're not afraid because they can do the thing, and now they want to do something more. Now, when you're working in leadership, some of the qualities that you want to develop in yourself in order to engage in this, let's say, the social aspect of leadership, developing who you are as a leader, is you want to be sensitive. And that is your ability to see into the people and into the situation more. You want to be able to see more of what's happening, broaden your perspective, and also deepen your understanding of the people and the thing and everything you're doing. You want to develop your sensitivity to be able to see what you see. Another thing is flexibility. As I've been talking about, right, all these different options that are out there in terms of the form that you use, the style of leadership, you're expressing your personality in these things, you have to be flexible because things will always change. Circumstances will always change, and you have to be able to see it and do it and be comfortable with that. So you want to develop your own flexibility. And closely related to this idea of flexibility is openness. And that's an idea of, well, we've never done this before. That's correct. But we're going to do it now. We've never done it this way before. Let's try it and see what happens. You want to have this openness so that you can be comfortable in things that are new and things that are changing. Courage is a quality you have to have too, because many times, especially as a leader, you make a decision and everybody has to live with the result. Mostly this comes into play with these are the standards that everybody has to meet. And if you set a standard that everybody has to meet and what they're doing and how they do it, then you've got to be willing to look somebody in the eye and say, you're not quite there. You're below that standard. You need to elevate your performance in this matter. And that is a very challenging part of leadership, to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, you're not doing as well as you need to. Insight is a critical quality that you want to be able to have, and it's not just, as I've talked about, being able to see the people and the dynamics involved, or the situation and the dynamics involved, but the ideas that are out there and how you're working with things that exist in the abstract. And your role as a leader is to have that kind of quality in yourself to be effective at that kind of abstract reasoning, but being good at it in a way that allows you to bring clarity to others. That's a key communication aspect, that you're able to see and understand what's abstract and make it clear and understandable to the people around you. And another quality, it's really almost like a super quality, is your ability to be involved with people, building relationships, not being an island unto yourself, but being out involved with others. Even if it means people might not like you, at least not like you from time to time. They might not like you from time to time. And in that space, the respect that people have for you, being able to develop that reputation for being reliable, trustworthy, honest, that is crucial to the respect that people give you and your ability to lead and influence them. They trust you. They can depend on you, and they give you that respect, and they're willing to do things that may not make sense at the moment. I want to read a couple of verses out of Galatians. Galatians 6, 1 and 2. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore them in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. In this role as a leader and the relationships that we have with others is to have care for them. It is to bear their burdens, that you're able to empathize with them and see the situation they're in and still enable them to do the things that allow you to complete the objectives of the group or the team, the organization, and also in ways that are good for them. You're caring for the people that you work with. And it will change you, and it will change them. There is that proverb that men sharpen men like iron sharpens iron. Working with people will help you do better at being yourself. And as you do this is almost going deeper into this quality of being involved with people, and that is developing a rapport, developing that reputation, developing that aura, because leadership is a people business. And you want to have a climate of trust. Building a climate of trust is an important part of how you deal with people. You want to be clear. You want to be honest. You want to have in mind all of the good, as I've said many times already today, the good of the person, the good of the team, and the good of the organization now and in the future. You want to be able to understand how people are feeling, to pick up on the cues that they're giving you, and to give them an opportunity for them to be open. You want to be a good listener. If you can listen, people will tell you what you need to know. You want to be tactful in how you say things, because you can, without tact, create new situations that you didn't need. Being tactful is helpful. You want to respect the rights and the boundaries of the people that you're dealing with. There may be things that people won't share, can't share, and you need to respect that and allow that to be happen. That's a part of that environment of trust. You have to trust them that they're sharing what's necessary. And to build that out, you've got to be a person who isn't judging. Your reflexive response should not be to judge the person when they're sharing something, but to listen and to understand. You're also going to have to be honest with your own feelings. This is what I'm feeling right now. That can be a little critical, and you'll want to remember to be tactful. And you want to be considerate of others. Don't invade their space when we were talking about boundaries and rights and things of the other human being. You don't want to be an invader, pushy, and creating hostility and conflict where it's not needed. And you want to be aware as best you can of what's going on from the perspective of the people that you're dealing with. How are you seen? How do they see you? How do they see the situation? Now, this next topic is really an important part, maybe the most important part about being the leader that God's created you to be. You can't be the leader that God's created you to be by being me. Won't work. So I want to talk about the gifts that God gives each person as we find ourselves in a place of, like, we are serving to guide the ship. And the first scripture I want to read is 2 Corinthians 10:13. We, however, will not boast beyond measure, but within the limits of the sphere which God has appointed us. And that God has put you in a place with a sphere of influence and responsibility. You want to stay within that space that God has appointed you and find comfort and excellence in that. In 1 Corinthians 9:16, it says, and this is Paul talking about himself, "For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for necessity is laid upon me." Necessity is laid upon me. "And woe is me if I do not preach the gospel." The gifts that God has given you will need to come out. God has given you gifts, and they'll need to come out. I don't know if Paul had a gift of preaching or, he talks about that as like, I'm bound up by it. I must. There is no option for me. It is who Paul is, what he's called to be, what God has given him the gifts to do. He must. There are things in you that God has planted in you that you need to be very comfortable in bringing them out of you, letting yourself do the thing in your sphere, knowing your boundaries, knowing the gifts. And this next one, Romans 12, verses 6 through 8, it's kind of a long passage, not that long, but it talks about a multitude of different things. And one of them is leadership. And I want to go through all of these things because even the ones that don't say leadership are related to things that you do as a leader. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. God's given you a gift. That's good. Use the gift. If prophecy, then let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching, he who exhorts in exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who sows mercy with cheerfulness. Now, I will say that all of those different gifts that God may give you are all important elements of who you are as a leader. You will give the word. You will prophesy. You will minister to people. You will exhort people. You will teach people. You will give liberally. And you will have moments where you need to show mercy. But it calls out leadership specifically, be diligent. Pay attention to what you're doing as a leader. And I'm going to end with this. 2 Timothy 1:6, therefore I remind you, Paul talking to Timothy, I remind you, stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. Paul has laid hands on Timothy and he's put him into a leadership position, and he says, stir up the gift that God has given you. I'm going to close with a few notes on leadership as we conclude. The ability to get along with others is a highly valued trait among leaders. People follow you because they trust you, they get along with you. Having that ability is a key to leadership. And the people that are looking for leaders are looking for people who can get along with others. Leaders need to learn to be better. Whatever you're doing, you should always strive to be better. And leaders should also always strive to be better at leadership. And my final note that I'm going to give on leadership is that it is always too soon to quit. As a leader, it's always too soon to quit, which is ironic because we're done. That's all I have to say about leadership, at least for the moment. It's been a lot of fun for me to share all these things that I've been living in for many decades. I appreciate everybody listening. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope that this inspires you in all the work you do and the positions you are to think more about this. Because it's not a matter of, I've heard the word and now I'm going to implement it. It's, you've heard the word and God is working in you, and who are you and what are you going to be in leadership? It is the beginning of growing in leadership. It is not the end. So thank you. I appreciate having this opportunity to share with you. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I want to thank Jesse and our AV team that has worked on all of our sound and video and everything. Thank you very much. And for Katie and for Deb, for all the administrative support that went into this course on leadership. Thank you. All right, this is a bonus section. I'm going to talk about delegation. I have mentioned several times that being able to delegate well is a specialty all on its own. And so in this section, I'm going to introduce at a high level a lot of ideas around delegating. And the first I want to make note is that a wise leader does not do the things that can be done by others, which raises a lot of questions when you're looking at the different tasks, as in, can this task be done by someone else? And if yes, then who? Who can do this task? Next question is, what is the worst that can happen? That's important to ask, because sometimes it can be worse than other times. But sometimes it's like, that's fine. You don't need to be perfect in the moment. So what's the worst that can happen? And another really important question is, how do I tell someone else how to do this task? And that can be something that you know and that you do all the time, and you can just explain to someone else, this is how the task is, now I need you to do this task. Or it can be something that's completely unknown. And I wanted to introduce that as an idea because of a situation that I had in an environment where I was delegating a task that, let's see, the setup of this thing is I delegated the task, and for months a person said, I got it. And then I was copied on an email thread where he was communicating to all of the senior managers to me that you didn't give us enough time to do this thing. I'm like, oh man. So I had to find someone else who was available and capable to do the task, and I didn't know what it was, or I didn't have the details in it. It wasn't something that had been done before. So it was all unknown. And so what I had to do in that case, how do you tell someone how to do this, is once they knew they had to do this task, we sat down together and figured it out. Until such a point that the person who's doing it said, I got it, I'll work on it, I'll come back to you. And it kind of, by stages, just went away and then came back done, which was great because I didn't want to get in trouble. What are the benefits of delegating? Why delegate tasks? One of the things that happens when you delegate is that the people around you grow in their understanding. They grow in their understanding by having additional tasks that they're engaged in. They also grow in their understanding because they see a broader view of what's being done in this environment. It is a way to further develop the relationship that you have with the different people that are working for you, and also for them to develop relationships with other people that are related to whatever task it is. And there is a key element in this, is the satisfaction of the person who has received the task. If it's something that the leader used to do and now they're doing it, that's a challenge, that's elevation, that's something new. And they know it's meaningful. They know their contribution matters. And that brings a lot of satisfaction in the job you're doing. I'm doing something that matters, and I'm the one who's doing it. Another thing that happens in delegating is that these challenges bring opportunities for the people with you, your team. It brings opportunities for them to be advanced or elevated in their responsibility. Many times when I would delegate to others, and it would be not just the mechanics of inside the team, but how we're relating to other teams, how I'm relating to my boss, and this person comes in, and they get that exposure, they get that opportunity to excel in things that are meaningful, where they're making the contribution, and they look good. People like that. That's another thing about the satisfaction of your job, is that you're investing your time, you're learning, you're growing, it matters, and people see, and they see that you're doing well. It makes you look good. And probably the most important motivation for why you delegate is that it gives you time. A lot of times people look at delegation and it costs you time because there's training involved and oversight involved and all these other things that if you did it yourself, it only takes this much time. But to turn it over to somebody else at first will take a lot of additional time. But the goal is that as you go and more people are doing more things, then that is less things that you're doing as a leader. It puts time in your pocket that you're able to do those things that are essential to leadership. It allows you a greater freedom to lead if you have been able to successfully delegate to others. So with all these benefits, why would anyone hesitate to delegate? We talked previously about human nature and our behavior, and a lot of this comes into play. And the first two I'm going to list off here, I think are, they're really fun. And that is If you're looking at your team and you think they just can't do it, they don't have the goods, they're not competent to take on this task, I can do it better. Maybe you're right. That's the thing. Maybe you're right. And that's how you learn to delegate well so that people grow in their competence, not just throwing things over the fence so that they can fail. Or maybe you're wrong. Maybe they are better at it than you are. Maybe your way is not the perfect way. You might learn something here. It's the maybe you're right category that I like about that one. And the next one is, I don't want to put my people that work for me in a situation where they're going to compete with me and maybe they're better than I am. Maybe you're right. Maybe they are better than you are. So you got to be a risk taker in order to delegate. The risk of you not getting the recognition, of other people finding out what your weaknesses are, what you're not good at. Oh yeah, you're gonna be exposed in what those things are, and it's okay. You can trust in that. You can trust that it's worth it in that, even if the people that you work with develop skills that make them better at certain tasks than you were. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. And this was something that I experienced in a very real way. And that is that the team that I was leading for over a dozen years was famous for knowing what was going on and getting things done. And so initially, people would say, I was lucky. I was lucky because I had all these good people who worked for me. But then they figured out people could come and go, but the team was always new stuff and got things done. And eventually people figure out it's not just luck, but that if you're a good leader and you're doing your best for the good of the people that work for you so that they grow in their experience, broaden their experience, deepen their knowledge, and that they perform more and more with excellence, that people figure out that it wasn't accidental. It's good for them and it's good for you. Another thing you can be concerned with is the time that it takes to show someone what to do, to figure out what needs to be done. Sometimes, like I said, it's like it takes you 5 minutes, it's going to take you an hour to explain. That means it's going to take 12 weeks or 12 days or 12 times this task get done before you ever get your time back. But there are all these other elements of the richness of the work you're doing that will be valuable to you all along the way, over and above the time you get back. Not to discount the fact that when you're delegating takes time. You need to spend the time to delegate well. Another thing that happens to people and why they hesitate to delegate is that they love being the operator. They love being the one who's doing the thing. That's what their satisfaction is tied up into. And the problem with that is it's living in the past. You're not that guy. You're not that person. Somebody else has to do that because now you're the leader. There's a famous book that was written, What Got You... How do I say that one? The title of the book is What Got You Here Will Not Keep You Here. And the idea is that you excelled in a role where you are deeply involved in the doing of the thing, and now you're the leader of the team of doing the thing. How you excelled at doing the thing is not what's going to make you successful as a leader. You've got to let the past go. That software I told you about that I became the administrator of it. I became the master of that and worked in a lot of famous companies doing the thing. But there was a time when I had to become the manager, and somebody who worked for me had to be the expert. And that meant I had to very much be not the expert in the thing, to give the person in that role the opportunity to excel in that role. And I found in my experience that my life was better when I did less, that I took my hands off the controls and let someone else do it, because they became really good at what they did, and I didn't have to do it. But it's a matter of making that transition. If you're the one who needs to be the operator, you're living in the past. And we already learned, leaders, about living in the future. There is also this sense, and this is very much living in the past is a problem for leaders, that if your team lacks the experience, then you have to elevate them. If you lack the experience to delegate, then you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to get some experience. You're going to want to find opportunities where you can delegate with the least amount of fear. That if the delegated person doesn't do as good as you could do, because you're the operator, it'll be okay. And if you give that freedom and that ability, they will get better than you were. If it needs to be perfect, or you need to be into control, then delegating is going to be hard for you. It's going to be a barrier for you to delegate, which is a key role in leadership. You're going to have to live with things that are different. I want to say that. Live with things being done differently than you would have. Now, if we're perfectionists and we think we're perfect, then we think everything that's different is imperfect. But that's not real. You have to be able to allow things to be different. Sometimes you'll know that they're not as good. That's why you want to select carefully, so that there's time and space for the person who is receiving this task to grow. There was a time when you were a novice and a rookie and you learned a lot of things. You have to let other people learn too. Another barrier to wanting to delegate is you don't really know what the follow-up is needed, because you're trying to find this very delicate balance between letting the person do the task on their own and not leaving them so isolated that they get stuck because they don't know how. So knowing what the needed follow-up and the timing and the pacing of that is really, really a skill that you develop. And there's no formula for this because you're dealing with people. In that case where I delegated that short-term critical task and nobody knew how to do it, as I said, as time went by, there was less and less I did. And it was more and more questions that were answered, then that person was more and more able to act independently, and there was less I needed to do, to the point where all I needed to say was, the deadline's next Friday. Yep, I got it. Here's what I got. Here's what's going on. There was a good relationship there, and the follow-up balanced out really well. And in the end, I was able to say, when people said, good job, you got the thing done, we were going to be really mad if you didn't, I was able to say, I didn't do anything. This guy did it all. He's the hero. Now, if a leader hesitates, what about the person that you're delegating to? Why would they hesitate? I want to grow. I want to be the boss. Maybe. Part of what happens when you delegate a task to someone, no matter how well you know it or how little you know it, they know less. To them, you're going off into the unknown. And that can be scary for people. Being in the unknown is typically a very scary thing. There is a saying I've heard about people that are in jobs they hate. I hate my job. I hate going to work. I hate everything about it. Well, why don't you get a new job? Well, that would be new and different, and I don't know what's out there, and I don't know. And I'm afraid of the unknown. I would rather be miserable than venture off into the unknown. So you're going to have people that are like that. Everybody's going to be like that. That's going to be something you're going to want to deal with. And You're venturing off into the unknown. Don't worry, it'll be okay. There is also a fear of being exposed. I talked about that at the beginning for the leader. What if people find out that I'm not as good at this as somebody who's on my team? I'll be exposed for my weaknesses. Well, people on your team are also afraid of being exposed to the things where they're weak. They lack the skill. They lack the experience. They've never done this thing. They don't know how. There's a fear involved in that. There's also a fear that people will have because they are disorganized. I'm just barely keeping track of all the stuff that I have going on already, and if you throw something else into the mix, I'm not organized enough to be able to do that. Well, some of that you have to take into consideration is why is a person disorganized? One of the best people I ever worked at had a desk that was a mess, just a total mess. And you just wondered, where is the organization? But she was very comfortable in the things that she was doing and always had everything organized, even if it didn't look like it. So there's different styles of being organized. But if your people are disorganized, one of the questions that you have to ask is, have we already piled up too many things for them to keep track of? They've got a capacity for this many things, and they're doing this many things. That can be a problem. Maybe they just need help in organizing better. How do you set priorities? How do you do the work that's necessary at the time that it's needed? Sometimes people that work for you, in order to delegate to them, you're going to have to create in their workspace the ability to take on something new and different. They might be afraid of being exposed to how disorganized they are. I think I was always afraid of that. I became a mad note taker, and it helped a little. Another thing that happens is that with a delegated task comes a new level of responsibility. And some people may be reluctant to take on responsibility. I was thinking in this case of like common experience for people to become parents for the first time is terror. Because they have this ginormous responsibility that you can't just skip over, and it can be terrifying. Can I bear up under the weight of this responsibility? Well, and people have that in the workplace and all the different things we do. Can I bear up under this responsibility? And people have different levels where they're comfortable, where they're capable. And so people might be hesitant to have tasks delegated to them because they're not only maybe perhaps at the limit of their ability to organize, but maybe at their ability to bear up under responsibility. So when you're dealing with people and delegating with people, be aware that they might have some reasons to hesitate. There are some barriers to being able to delegate successfully. If you cannot tolerate errors, or if you're in an organization that will not tolerate errors, then it's going to be very difficult to delegate. Especially in every task that you're being judged and held accountable on its perfection. It will be that much harder to delegate those tasks. It may be you, it may be people you work for. It's something you're going to have to manage. It is a barrier. Another thing that happens that is a barrier to that is if the task involved includes decision-making that is absolutely critical. One of the reasons that you're in leadership is to make critical decisions. And so you may not be able to delegate some of the decisions you're involved in. It may also be an urgent matter. Like there is the deadline is now, and it's get it done, and you don't have the space to teach and to let the person grow and practice. If it's that urgent, you're just going to have to do it. Another thing that makes things difficult to delegate is if the requirements are unclear. If it's not clear what needs to be done. That story I told you earlier about delegating a task that was on a short deadline to somebody new, and I didn't know what it was to do the thing. Those requirements were confusing. Sometimes they're ambiguous by design. And so how do you tell someone to do a task that's not defined? That can be a real barrier. I found in some cases I just learned to develop in the people that worked with me the ability to figure it out, to take something ambiguous and figure out what the answers were. I found in the space I was working in this large corporation that there was just an avalanche of things that had to be done. And a lot of it was related to this corporation needs to have all the data around these circumstances, and there would be a team put together to gather all that information. And then it would pop up in your email and say, you've got 2 weeks and we need all this information. And you would look at it and say, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't understand the question. I don't understand what the answers would be. I know nothing. And you'd get on a meeting with about 3, 4, 5 people that have been working for months developing this process to get this information. And then there'd be 30 other people that were just like you. Only we're talking highly competitive dog-eat-dog corporate environment where all your peers want to eat you and make you look bad. It wasn't really true at all. What I found was it was really a magical thing that I would say, I don't understand what is being asked. Can someone help me? No one was ever critical of that. It was stunning to me. I could say over and over again, will someone help me? And everybody on that team said, I understand it. I've worked with you before. I'll give you a call. We'll get this solved. It's not as hard as it sounds. Or, sometimes there's specific questions and people would clarify what was going on. And it was very, very helpful in clarifying what the requirements were and getting tasks done. And it was also one of those things, as I said, you develop people that can ask the same question, that aren't afraid to say, I don't understand. Another thing that can happen to you that becomes a real barrier to being able to delegate, as I was talking, maybe their people's stacks are too full. And the question is, why is that? Do they need to grow in their capacity? Or are you shorthanded? Are you understaffed? If you're understaffed, then everybody has to move as fast as they possibly can, and there's very little space to delegate and to grow. So it may be a staffing issue. One of the things you need to ask yourself when you're getting ready to delegate something is, what are the things that you ought to delegate? Routine tasks are the top candidate, especially if it's a time-consuming task that you as a leader can give to someone, train them, and they can do the task, and then you can use that time available to do the things of leadership that you need to. If it's routine, you can delegate it to someone. That is a big benefit. As I said, now they're learning something new. Their contributions are meaningful. A lot of job satisfaction, opportunities to excel. There are things that you can delegate that include their own set of decision-making. I talked to you before that if they're critical decisions, as a leader, you need to make those critical decisions. But you don't need to make every decision that comes down the road. There is a famous story, I think, that every new officer in the military gets told about delegation. And they start out with this complex scenario. You have a 50-foot flagpole. It's got to be put in this specific place. You've got a rope. You've got a ladder. How do you put up the flagpole? And the young officers had started drawing diagrams on how, I said, and you also have a sergeant and you have 3 privates. How do you get the flagpole up? And people will write out detailed plans for that. But the answer the answer you had to learn to give was, Sergeant, get that flagpole up. You didn't have to decide anything. Just, Sergeant, get that flagpole up. If you can delegate minor decisions, then do it. You'll go back and you ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Well, that's how you tell the difference between a minor decision and a major decision. What's the worst that can happen? Another motivation for what you should delegate are those things that allow the people around you to deepen and expand their knowledge. Being able to delegate is an opportunity for the people that work with you to grow in the work that they're doing. And if you have that opportunity, give it. There's another challenge, too, that happens when you're working with a team, and that's one person becomes the expert in the thing. They're the expert, and they always do the thing, and no one else does. Same with you as a leader. I'm the only one. I do the thing. No one else knows. You can get so over-specialized that your person gets a cold, and now you're out of luck. And there's also this sense that you're building a team. We want to know what everybody's doing so that we can help them. They can help us. We want to broaden our expertise and not fall into the risk of having the one person who's the only person. So you want to delegate so you can spread the knowledge there. Keep people from being overly specialized. They may not know it, but the person who's the unfireable only person who can do that task is only secure as long as that task is necessary. And whole jobs can go away. They're not that helpful. Now, there are some things that you can't delegate. And that has to do with setting the objectives of the team and of people. When you're setting up individual goals, that's not something you can delegate. You can give people that work with you opportunities to share what they would like to do, but setting their goals has got to be you. You're the leader. You have to set the objectives. Another thing that you can't delegate is making sure the people with you are developing. That's something you have to do with them and for them. You can't delegate that to someone else. Building teamwork. You may be fortunate and have someone on your team who can help build that team, but that's on you. You have to be the one who's developing the team. You have to be the one who's leading the team. You have to be able to build that cohesion because they're building that cohesion not just with each other, but also with you. Crucial thing you can never delegate is bringing correction. You can't delegate to this person, to that person. They're not doing as good as they should. That's something you have to keep for yourself. You have to take that privately. You have to look at the person in the eye, and you have to share with them where they are not performing at the level that's necessary. All right. Who are the best delegates for being delegated to? Who are your best candidates? You're looking for people that are looking for more, people that have shown themselves to be capable and are interested in doing more. They want something new. Maybe they're bored. Give them something that challenges them. Let them try something new. Test them. This goes into the next one. What if you don't know if they're any good or not? What if the person is unknown? Well, give them something to do and see how they do it. Delegate a task to them and see how they respond. Another way to identify candidates for something you're going to delegate is the person who already knows about what you're doing. They are closest to the work already. This is not something that's in a completely new environment, but is where they are plus more. So those are the things you're looking for when you're looking for somebody to delegate to. Who don't you delegate to? Who should you not delegate the task to? If they're not in your group, if they're not a direct report to you, you can't delegate to them. Just won't work. You got to deal with your own people to grow them in the work that you're doing. There are a lot of other people around that will help you on things. I need your help to do this task. That's not delegating. You're asking a favor. Or you're getting the other team to do their work. But it's a different relationship. You can't delegate to somebody who's not a part of your group. It's also a challenge that when you have a group of people, you're going to have a favorite. It will happen. A lot of leadership people say don't have favorites. Treat everyone the same. I don't think that's right. You will have favorites, and you'll have favorites because their performance is better. And people that perform better get more perks. And people that do less or do less well have less. It's normal. But the risk is when you're delegating things that you always have a go-to. And that person becomes the one person that does everything, and everyone else is bored and not involved. You need to share that wealth. You need to make sure that everybody is having an opportunity to grow to the best of their ability. Even if they're at the bottom of the list, they need to grow in something. You need to spread that out so that everybody is engaged and growing in their breadth and depth of knowledge. And there are other things that can come up that will prevent you from delegating to a particular candidate. And these are things that can be personal. They can be things that are personality. They can be things that are availability. Maybe the task is emotionally challenging and they're not the candidate for that. You will always be evaluating who the person is that you're delegating to and working to help them be successful. And sometimes that means not delegating to them, not pushing them into the deep end before they're ready to swim. Now, I'm going to talk last about a climate you want to have in your organization that will allow you to be successful in delegating. And the foundation of that is going to be a trust and a confidence that you have in the people working for you and that they have with you. That you're able to give them a task with sufficient information to be successful and without micromanaging and being overbearing in what they're doing. And in that, there needs to be a climate where communication is open and free. That you can say honestly what's going on. A clear statement of accountability is an essential to being able to delegate. Having a climate in which delegation is successful is by, as clear as possible, being able to say where the or else exists. I'm delegating this to you. Do this thing or else this other thing. You know, that's what delegating responsibility is all about. It comes with accountability. You're delegating oftentimes things that you're accountable for. So there's an or else for you. And when you delegate it to somebody else, the answer is not, do this thing or else I get fired. What's the motivation in that? Maybe opposite of what you want. But there is a level of accountability that you want to put with this, which when you're delegating something makes the clarity of the task essential. I need to know what it is I'm going to be held accountable for. I need to know the thing that I'm responsible for in order that the accountability will make sense. When there's ambiguity in those things, there's a lot less accountability involved in that. Sometimes you'll have to write it out to say what it is. When you're writing out what you're delegating, it is important that your objectives be clear and the limits are known. There's always a date. A task without a date is just wishful thinking. I need you to do this real soon is usually not enough. Clarity around priorities and deadlines is essential to those people that are being delegated to. And especially you'll find a lot of times when you've delegated multiple things and people have routine tasks that are part of what you would think of as their ordinary job, and they will say, I've got these 10 things, but I can only do 7. Which 7? And you help to provide those priorities to people. And you train them to be able to figure them out themselves. You want to know what done looks like. What does it look like when we're done? I need you to do this task. When is it over? How will I know that I'm done? When do I get the prize? If it's ambiguous, then it's just like, I'm going to be doing this the rest of my life? No. You have to know what done looks like. You have to know what successful looks like. And you have to know when it's going to look like. And when you delegate to somebody, you're going to also have to give them authority. If they're going to do the thing, they have to be the boss of the thing. That they're the ones that people go to for answers in the thing or the task, or that people will support them. There is an investment of authority. When you're delegating your responsibility, you want to delegate the authority to be successful in executing that responsibility. And you have to balance that with giving the person the freedom to perform the task. They have to be able to do the task on their own. And so you're stuck trying to find out, how much do I ask? When do I ask? How do I ask? If it's due here, how many times between here and there are we going to sit down and talk about progress? Are we making progress? Are there roadblocks? Are there other things involved? And all of that needs to be created in a climate where people are free to do the work. And when you are able, in the course of the execution of that task, to touch base with them sufficiently so that they don't hit a roadblock and stop and just sit and worry. You want to be able to touch base with them often enough to break them out of that spot so they can continue and have that achievement that they can work toward. And that when they get to the end, they will feel comfortable claiming the glory of that achievement as their own, because you weren't just looking over their shoulder and moving the mouse for them, that they did the thing. That concludes a very high overview of matters that are important to being able to delegate. And I think as you practice and you see that, you'll understand what a complex and powerful and important tool it is for a leader. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your attention.